WA used to be the number one jurisdiction in the world for investment into projects. We're now 17th, I believe.
There's a lot of fake money sloshing around the system. Governments can print money to get themselves out of problems. You cannot print gold. Gold is something that has held value for generations and generations.
What are the critical qualities, personal qualities and behaviours that you think are necessary to support effective leadership?
If you're very good technically, but you don't live those values, you don't focus on culture, you don't do it, that is a poorer way to lead, because...
What's the big risk the world is not paying enough attention to?
One gym session doesn't make a difference, but 100 gym sessions in a year does. You've always got to start with that first step. Hey mate, go buy as much Apple stock as you can and just hold on to it for the next 20 years.
Yeah. What's the biggest single challenge facing the mining industry today? Darren Stralow, welcome to Hearts and Minds.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good to see you again.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fair to say the past 18 months or so has been a challenging period for Bellevue, but congratulations on to you and your team for the good progress you're making. I understand the company's on track to achieve its production and cost guidance for this financial year. You seem to have good cash flow from the mine. Mm-hmm. And you seem to have de-risked the balance sheet very substantially, which is giving you more exposure to the spot price. So how are you feeling about the state of the business and plans for expansion?
Yeah, so we have, look, it is true, we've had an up and down time over the journey. And sometimes I sort of reflect and think, I've been at Bellevue for 4+ years now. So spent that time taking an exploration project from that exploration phase through development, through ramp up, and now into sort of hitting that steady state production. And, doing that as a single asset company definitely comes with its challenges. When you are just a single asset trying to build things, you're a lot more exposed to anything that, can and will go wrong when you build a project. And it's pretty common for for assets to face challenges when you're doing it, when you're building them. But I think that a positive through the whole scene is that while we've been able to sort of build the mine, build the company, get the everything ramped up and moved, like we've put a lot of time and effort into just how things are internally in the company, building the culture, building the people, building the team up. And we now are sort of sitting here today with a steady asset. We're on track to do what we said we're going to do, which is really important. But we've also got an awesome team and, a lot of people that, I love going to site and, seeing everyone and catching up and just talking about life. We've got some really, really good high-performing professionals that will go long places in the mining industry, and that's important.
You do, and I'm sure they'll help you build the portfolio beyond the single asset. What's really impressed me about your business is the renewables aspect. I mean, you invested heavily in renewables. You got some criticism at the time from your peers in the industry saying that you were putting too much money into renewables, but I don't hear them criticising you now. I mean, with the cost of diesel as it is, you must have one of the lowest cost profiles in the industry when it comes to fuel expenses.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess for people that aren't as familiar with Bellevue, when we built the mine, we also built a very high renewable energy power station and power infrastructure to feed the mine. So the reason we did it, we were building the mine back in 2021, 2022. ESG, decarbonisation were huge topics and huge things that you needed to, attract investment, to attract people, to get government approvals, do all those things that you needed during that time. So we went down the pathway of building. We had an ambition to build Australia's first ever net zero carbon gold mine. And as you said, people thought we were a bit weird at the time. And but look, we set the path. Once we set that pathway, it was just about ticking off the boxes along the way in order to achieve the plan. And we announced at Diggers and Dealers last year in 2025 that we were a net zero gold producer. So first company worldwide to make that announcement. And we ended up doing it. I mean, I still remember the old, board proposals, and when we talked about the benefits of decarbonisation and the strategy that we were doing, there was a big circle of benefits that we got from it. And one of them was security against fossil fuel disruptions. There was the Varanus Island issue on the Northwest Shelf. There was, an over-reliance on diesel supply and potential for diesel price shocks. And it was definitely, on the matrix. It certainly wasn't at the very top of the matrix. But what we've seen over time is that we've had this underlying benefit of the ESG focus thing really help while we were ramping up the team. So, we've managed to attract a really high-performing team, and we're consistently being told from that team that, the ESG messaging and the ESG outcomes within Bellevue are a big part of why they chose to work with us. But we're now actually seeing it on the balance sheet as well, in that we have the lowest exposure to diesel price across the entire sector. And so when people are worried about diesel, they worry about other mining companies, and they don't worry about Bellevue.
You must be very proud of that achievement, the first net zero gold mine in the world. And I do remember at the time you getting accolades internationally for it. And certainly within the domestic industry, you're setting the pace. When, you're putting walking the talk, so to speak, in terms of that investment. And as you rightly say, it's now turning up on the balance sheet. So it's evidence that doing the right thing by the environment is a good business outcome as well.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that it's only new as well. I think that's the key, is that there's not a market for, we call it green gold. The market for that didn't exist. We have created a product that is differentiated. So now it's just a matter of finding the right market for it. And we have a lot of really positive early stage stuff that I can't talk about at the moment, but there are some really exciting prospects on the horizon for what the green gold might go into and the way you might see it publicised, which will be good for Bellevue. We're hopeful we can get a premium for it, but even if that doesn't arise, you're just going to get the gold spot price, which is a pretty strong spot at the moment anyway.
Yeah, sure is. Darren, this, as you know, this podcast is all about considering leadership as a critical aspect of business and the impact of leadership behaviour on engagement of people and culture development within a business. So over the course of the next half hour or so, let's talk about some of those issues. But before we do, let's dig a little bit deeper, because our audience is always curious to know about the backgrounds, the personal backgrounds of people. So what can you tell us about your early formative years? Where did you grow up? What was it like? And what were your influences and interests?
Yeah, so I guess in the shortest way possible, I was born in New South Wales, in country New South Wales. My dad's from Blacktown in Western Sydney, and my mum's from Fremantle in WA. So first couple of years in Mudgee in New South Wales, and then moved over to East Fremantle when I was about 3 years old. So I consider myself an East Freo local. I'm a Freo boy. I've never, apart from a couple of stints living overseas for a short period of time, I've never lived far from and a stint in Kalgoorlie at the WA School of Mines. I've never been far from the centre of Freo, and just walking around the streets of Freo is something that makes me pretty happy. So yeah, families, mum, dad, who are both teachers, and my brother who works in mining as well. And we're a year apart, so we grew up very close and have very similar interests and are very good mates to this day.
So you're a Sharks supporter?
I'm a Sharks supporter. I'm a Dockers supporter.
Oh, well, look, you're heading in the right direction this year, the Dockers.
Oh yeah,
my goodness!
I can talk about them for 45 minutes if you like, mate.
You're a real chance, I reckon, this year.
We're having a good run.
All right, so one of two children in the family. Did you enjoy school? Were you good at it? And were there any individuals outside of your immediate family that had a big influence you during those years?
Yeah, so I was okay at school. I was pretty good at maths and science. I was a straight C English student, and I certainly liked the extracurricular activities, and me and my mates were all into bodyboarding and punk rock music, and doing running around the streets of the area that we grew up in, as you do. And yeah, I guess when you think about the formative times for me, doesn't go back to the schooling years, the high school years. It goes to the university years when, I chose to study mining engineering. My dad was a big influencer into that. Like he'd been exposed to mining through teaching at Cobar High School when he was first out of university. And, he encouraged me to give mining a go, and that caused me to sign up at the WA School of Mines and moved out to Kalgoorlie when I was 18 years old to, finish my studies up in Cal. And I can say the effect that going up to WASM had on us in those days, this is pre-mobile phones. It was 1999 was the first year I lived in Kalgoorlie for WASM. So, you only had a shared payphone to call your parents back in Perth. Yeah. And you move out to Kalgoorlie with a bunch of people the same age as you, all studying the same subjects, all drinking at the same pubs. We used to have our own, we still do have our own pub on campus at the School of Mines. And the bonds that forms at such an important part of your life, your peers at the School of Mines become like your family, and they're your family away from home. And, they're still some of my best mates today, the people I went through WASM with. And I have a huge soft spot in my heart for the School of Mines and for Kalgoorlie, just because of how, formative in my career and my life it was moving out to Cal when I did.
And no doubt that's a big part of the reason why you're today the president of the Kalgoorlie School of Mines alumni. So no doubt that's a reflection of the appreciation you had for your time there.
Yeah, that's right. And I just think that, there's such a, even when I was coming up, we'd hire our graduates out of the School of Mines and stay connected through generations with the classmates there and the groups that are coming out, and still to this day to have a role where I can still have that connection to, the newest graduates coming out. I mean, I'm on a plane on Friday flying up to Kalgoorlie to go to the graduation ceremony. So the new graduating class that came out at the end of last year all get their certificates on Friday night. So as a president, I get to go up and do a speech up there.
And you're signing all the good ones up for Bellevue in the next year or two?
That's part of the... these are the things the benefits that you get from getting the exposure to the people up there. But look, there's always a really good group of people coming up there that are and just love getting up there. The social club in Kalgoorlie, which is what we at the School of Mines, which is what we call the pub that's on campus. That's one of my happy places in life, and you just walk in there and all your stresses come off you, and all your worries of the world go away when you're sitting down there, playing a game of pool and drinking a can of bad beer at the School of Mines in Kalgoorlie.
Yeah, good on you. When you're not concentrating on your work, and that must occupy a lot of your time, how do you relax?
Yeah, so I guess when you're an executive in a company, you're constantly working. You've got your phone in your pocket, you've got your access to your emails, you've got all these things. So, I do think it's very important to have some outlets to help you relax. So mine are through, I go to the gym most mornings. I've got a group of mates there that I see, play a bit of sports still. So I play a bit of basketball for those that can't see sitting down. I'm quite a tall fella. So,
how tall are you?
202 centimetres.
What's that in English?
Like 6'7.5", something like that. And so I just find that's a really good outlet because, you're measured by effort there, right? Like it's just something, I'm just a bloke that turns up and puts in a bit of effort, and based on that effort being good, people think I'm good or bad, and I'll get opportunities or not, or respect or not from the people around me because of it. And it definitely helps to shake the cobwebs off. Yeah. And you can still find me at any time a 90s punk band is touring Perth. You'll probably find me and my brother standing up the back of the dance pit to bopping our heads along.
What were some of your favourite punk bands in the 90s?
Oh, that's a good one. So Strung Out was always one that I liked, which is maybe a lesser-known one, but Rancid, NoFX, Pennywise, Lagwagon, Bad Religion, all the big ones.
Fabulous. Share something about you that not many people would know.
Yeah, so I'm a pretty open book, but people always, we talk about sport and sport as a connector, and I've always used it as one. But a lesser known one that people know is my family went on holiday to the US when I was about 10 years old. And me and my brother decided to get heavily into the NFL. So as a kid, this is pre-Freo Dockers, pre all that, we were East Fremantle Sharks fans, and I was a San Francisco 49ers fan. So, I'd like American sport, it's all good, but I'm I'm very excited to see the Niners play in Australia later this year. They're coming to Melbourne and we've got tickets.
It's interesting you say that. I've just read a book by the former coach, he's now dead, of the San Francisco 49ers. The book is called The Score Takes Care of Itself.
Bill Walsh, yeah.
Bill Walsh, that's it. It
Great
was
book, yeah.
co-written by him and his son. And who was the famous quarterback?
Joe Montana.
Yeah. He's got a few chapters in there. Brilliant book. You know, a relatively uneducated man, academically speaking, but so wise. And one of these, he reminds me a bit of the former Essendon coach, Kevin Sheedy.
Kevin Sheedy, yeah.
Who'd been with Essendon a long time. These people have an ability to read people, understand the backgrounds and the heritage of these people. And their mission is not so much to develop the technical skills of a footballer. Mm-hmm. It's to round off the edges and create a wholesome young man to go forth in the world. So it's a very impressive philosophy on leadership.
It is, and it's just about, to instill it down, it's about acting having your actions matching the behaviour and the outcome that you want, and then the outcome comes along, right? And that goes through, he's very famous for, making the secretaries within the organisation understand that they weren't just answering phones, they were helping the San Francisco 49ers win Super Bowls.
Yep.
So,
Yep, spot on. Let's talk a bit more about leadership then. So what are the critical qualities, personal qualities and behaviours that you think are necessary to support effective leadership?
Yeah, so look, there's a huge amount that goes into it, but I guess leadership in a technical space like we are, which is mining, mining is a technical game, and the base way to do it. I mean, I'm a mining engineer by background. I need to understand what drives value and what the real pinch points are within the business to drive that value. That's one part of the equation. The second part of the equation that's also as important is culture and living the values. So it's kind of a merging of the two together. Like if you're very good technically, but you don't, live those values, you don't focus on culture, you don't do it, that is a poorer way to lead, because you're only outcomes focused, you're not process focused, you're not culture focused, and it can create a workplace that people don't want to work in. So I guess the key really is that you try not to just be technically good. And I'm very happy to say that I'm not the best technical mining engineer out there. I was a okay mining engineer, but I was never top of the pack. And there's plenty of people coming through even my business now that I'm in awe of the technical work that they can do. But it's about balancing that with a strategic brain and a culture brain, and making sure that the actions that you do back all that up on a day-by-day basis. And that's why it's a relentless game, because you just have to be so consistent and so deliberate with everything that you do that it never stops.
Well said. And I think the important thing, at least from my point of view, is that leadership behaviours are learnable. They're a set of skills that you can develop over time, but you do need the self-discipline to do the reps every day. Small increments in terms of quality of behaviour in front of other people builds enduring habits. And I think a lot of people tend to be of the view that you're born a leader or you're not, but it's simply not the case. Sure, some people are more effective leaders because they have natural traits of personality that lend themselves to inspiring people and motivating people and engaging them. But we can all improve. We are all a work in progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a very important point. And, I think leadership is also about having conversations with people, preferably face-to-face rather than via Teams, because it's in those face-to-face conversations that you begin to understand the other person's point of view and their perspective and their take on life. And that helps build trust, and it helps, shape relationships. So that face-to-face time every day is very important, I think, for all leaders. What are some other qualities? You've mentioned some really good ones there. What else makes a really good leader?
Yes, I think that, what differentiates someone who is a really good operator from a really good leader is the ability to work. I like the nomenclature of you're able to work on the dance floor and on the balcony, right? So, the skill set that you build over your career, the technical skills that you have, all that helps you operate at dance floor level. You can, if you need to roll your sleeves up and get involved, then you can, and you can walk the talk, you know what's going on, and you know how to influence things there. But to be that real leader and to have the perspective that you're able to, and this helps you when you move higher up in a business, is you have to be able to pull yourself out of the maelstrom, get off the dance floor and get up on the balcony and be able to see things from, that bird's eye view and see, what's coming down the pike, what the different things are that could come in, because, you can get so caught up in just the day-to-day or just the actions that get you through the next 24 hours. Your job as a leader is to start thinking on longer time horizons. So extracting yourself from that day-to-day and being able to, operate both at the dance floor and the balcony level is really important.
I love that analogy. It's strategic and tactical, and I think that's related to what some people would describe as being able to course correct in real time. And as an executive search consultant, one of the qualities that I'm desperately trying to find in a candidate that I'm considering is their ability to understand the changing circumstances and to operate calmly in what a lot of people call VUCA conditions. VUCA meaning volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. There's a lot of that these days, increasingly so. If a leader is able to remain calm and make good quality decisions, even though it might be in the context of incomplete information, then that person will be able to improvise and adapt and make use of whatever resources he or she has available to them. And I think that's what seems to separate a really effective leader from, a not so good leader, is that capacity to course correct.
Yeah, agree.
Listening and asking questions. Gee, I wish I could be better at it than I am. I think over time I've understood of myself that my listening skills were historically pretty poor. I might feign listening with a view to positioning myself to win an argument, but I wasn't really there with the intent of genuinely trying to understand why the other person holds that point of view. And I think with maturity and age, most people can get better at the art of listening. And the ability to ask really good quality questions is essential for a leader, I think. I often see a leader's job as knowing which questions to ask, and then it's the manager's job to go and find answers to those questions. So you've got to be able to, in a constructive and empowering way, pose questions to people and plant the seed and get them to take ownership of an important question that needs resolving.
Yeah, I think when I was first made a general manager on a mine, that was a very different role from just looking after my own, mining engineering sort of stuff, the mining side of things, to a much broader role. And I went around talking to a few people that were within my network, a bit older and a bit wiser, about, some advice for what to do when in that GM role. And some really good advice that I got from an older bloke by the name of Hugh McIsaac, who was an old miner that became a mine manager from Sudbury in Canada. He said to me, get yourself out of your office. It's stuff that you talked about before. Go and sit in other people's office and just have a conversation with them. Go and go out on the plant and talk to the plant operators and just have a conversation with them, and just remember something that they say to you. They'll come to you with a suggestion. There'll be something in that conversation that you can pick up. What's important is a week later, next time you see that person, you go up to them and you say, hey, remember we talked about that? This is the reason that we can't do it, or this is what I did to follow it up and I did that. And it just gives that, it sounds manufactured, but there's so many people that will get a leadership position and then just sit in the office and never go outside, never talk to anybody because, emails are relentless and the work comes in. Part of the job of being a leader is being visible, being out there in the field, listening to people, giving people feedback. And you can train yourself to do it. If you just train yourself for this time during a day, I'm going to go out, I'm going to talk to people, I'm going to listen. and I'm actively listening for something that I can act on so that I can go back to them in the future and show them that I've acted on it. That's how you build trust, and that's how you build rapport, and that's how you get your workforce to really work for you.
I love it. Never underestimate the power of mattering. You know, to understand somebody and then go back to them and follow up, as you've just alluded to, with an indication of what you intend to do based on the feedback they've given you is so important. It builds inclusion and helps people feel as though they belong to the team. Storytelling, Darren. Once again, I'm on a mission to become a better storyteller, because everything I read suggests to me that the really good leaders, in no matter what discipline of business or creative arts, they're really good storytellers. And it seems to me that if you can embed an important message in the form of a story that you can relay to people, it's far more impactful and memorable than simply showing a PowerPoint presentation with facts and figures on it. I read a book recently by Gabrielle Dolan. It's called Magnetic Stories. And one thing she says, and it sticks in my mind, she said that when I'm talking to people, she's an executive coach, when I'm talking to people about the value and importance of integrity, for example, which is often a value that you see on corporate websites, instead of talking about integrity in abstract terms, I'll relay to them this story. And she takes us back to the year 2003. You'd remember this. It was the Cricket World Cup semi-final between Australia and Sri Lanka. Adam Gilchrist was at the crease. He got down on one knee to take a sweep at a ball, a thin edge to his pad, which the wicketkeeper took. The umpire didn't see the contact between the ball and the bat and called it not out. Gilchrist, being the man that he is and was, walked. He got a bollocking from Ricky Ponting in the change room for doing it, but he knew that he'd done the right thing. And that's often that story, apart from creating the visual. As I was describing that, you're probably seeing Gilchrist on a knee taking a sweep. That's often said to be one of the most memorable active displays of sportsmanship ever across any code of sport. And I agree. I mean, he was such a gentleman, such a sport, but copped a lot of criticism. But because of the talent that he showed, both as a wicketkeeper and a batsman, he got away with it. And I think, if you can embed a message like that into a story like that, people will remember it for a lot longer than simply a more bland, abstract sort of message. What do you think?
Yeah, so look, storytelling is hugely important in getting every message across. And it's funny that, using sporting analogies is a great way to do it, because to have the personal stories to relate to everything takes a lot of reflection and a lot of experience and quite a few grey hairs to get to that point, which is why, I guess getting to that leadership space and getting those good stories, isn't something that you just get, straight as a young person entering the industry. But I guess the point on it would be to try and look for those opportunities as you go to find out what those stories are, to reflect on them. You talk about lots of things at the pub with your mates, and there's always going to be a theme behind why you talk about it. Over time, they will evolve into, stories with meaning, stories with messages. So I guess the advice would be to, utilize the experience that you have to really, remember the big stories and remember the learnings from it, because you never know when you're going to want it to talk to a crew about, or talk to your workforce about, or talk to your workmates about.
Correct. Yeah. And it's not something that you can learn in an MBA or a university course, is it? You've just got to understand the importance of it as you mature as a human being and get better at it.
That's right. And it's also much more effective if you're talking about a personal story or something that you actually experienced, rather than an analogy from a different sort of field as well. So you've just got to look for those little opportunities, and then when you've told the same story 50 times, as sort of happens when you talk to different people, you'll get pretty good at telling it by the end.
Yeah. We've alluded to it, but we haven't mentioned it by name. Empathy. It's all part of what we've been talking about. It seems to me that a lot of people have double standards. They seem to judge themselves by their intentions, but they judge other people by their behaviour. In other words, they don't try and get around the wall to be able to genuinely understand why someone behaved as they did. They just judge the behaviour. And I think it's so important it's just not fair to judge people by a different standard than you judge yourself. Again, it's part of the leadership journey, isn't it?
It is. And I guess I remember going through in my early career with a fellow by the name of Graham Taylor, who did a management course with me when I was a young engineer. And he took me through this thing that he called the communication model. And it's been stuck in my head for a long time, which is when you say something to someone, there's a lot of things that can happen between the thought being in your brain and that thought being in the brain of the person that you're talking to, which is essentially what you're trying to do. And a key part of that are the filters that the person has on the message that you're giving. So if you don't have trust and you don't have empathy and you don't have any of those things, then they may, paint those thoughts with a negative tinge, and what you're trying to say and the intention of the words, the intention of the action will get misinterpreted and could lead to a negative outcome. So, ever since then, I think it's just always worth, really thinking about what might be going on with, in the mind of the person, with the filters that they have, with the experience that they have that might be, affecting the way that they're hearing what you're saying or interpreting your actions. And by going down to that deeper level and trying to have that understanding, it creates a really good sort of basis for having that empathy and trying to understand why people are acting the way that they are.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Darren, you're both a CEO and a managing director, so you run the business as an executive and you sit on the board of governance. I'm interested to know from you, what does leadership manifest differently at the board and the executive level in terms of the personal qualities and behaviours? Is there a separation?
Yes, I think ethically it needs to be the same. You're going to have your own personal morals, you're going to have your own personal ethics and your own sort of standards that you need to operate under, and that should be consistent and that should be the same whether you're managing the business or thinking about the board level discussions. But I think where the real difference is from the board level is you really need to put your thoughts into the minds of your shareholders. You constantly have to remind yourself that it's the shareholders that own the company, not the board, not the management, certainly not yourself, and always have consideration for what the shareholders want and how it is. From a managing director perspective, which is sort of what I do, talking to shareholders and communicating the plans and getting feedback is a huge part of what you do, because, when you're in a technical role, you might go, I'm going to do this because technically it's the right thing to do. But again, that's dance floor level thinking, not really the balcony level thinking. So, as a board, you're much more on the balcony and you're much more thinking about long-term and strategy and that key group of stakeholders, which is the shareholders who are ultimately the owners of the company.
I'm glad you said the broader set of stakeholders. Obviously, the shareholders are a very critical and important group, but there are stakeholders beyond the shareholders, aren't there? Community groups, Indigenous landholders and so on.
100%.
And your job is to be able to communicate and build relationships with all of those.
Yes. So, look, the list of stakeholders goes very, very deep. And I think the core piece that's changed over the years in, particularly in mining, but I think in all business, is it's not just purely about making dollars and all that. Everything's intertwined these days. Is that if you lose the license to operate, then you're not making money. Therefore, being a positive citizen, having good community relations, having good government relations, and just doing the right thing on a day-by-day basis actually gets reflected in your bottom line, because you just can't get away with poor behaviour. And it manifests in safety in mining. Safety is a real thing that we need to live and breathe on a day-by-day basis. And production pays the bills, but you can't have safety or production. You have to have safety and production, and that's the balance that you have to have as a company. Is you really cannot make money. You're going to get stopped. You're going to have big things happen if you have any incident or anything that sort of adversely affects you on that front. So safety is important, community is important, government's important, and it's our job to manage that and make sure we risk manage it properly as a management team and as a board.
If we turn our focus to staff engagement, how best should a company incentivise its people through financial and non-financial means?
Yeah, so in mining, I'm a big believer in the structure being short-term incentives, long-term incentives. Short-term incentives are exactly what they are. They're we put out yearly guidance. We need to achieve our guidance with a bunch of cost parameters, quality parameters, and if you achieve that, then you get your STI. But it's also important to have good long-term incentives out. So we run, and mining typically runs a 3-year incentive scheme. And the purpose of those incentives is just to retain people. And if you do it right, if you pick the right company, if you pick the right incentive scheme, and what's really important is actually to align those, particularly the long-term incentives, with creation of shareholder value. And if you create that shareholder value, then you can make good money. And if you don't, then you don't get them. I mean, it's a black and white sort of thing when you put them out. But it's about retention of good people is what it's all about.
And you don't need to tell me that LTIs are effective. As an executive recruiter, one of the biggest challenges we face is being able to influence and lure people away from a company where they might have $500,000 or $1 million or more dollars worth of shares vesting in 6 months or so. And unless our client, the new company, is prepared to compensate the person for leaving that money on the table, it's a very hard ask. To what extent should companies reward people financially for adherence to or support for company values? How hard is that to implement?
Yeah, so it's a hard one, but also an important one. And I guess the way that you really it boils down to it is if you're not acting the values, then you shouldn't be in the management role in the first place. So that's where performance management side comes of it, and that's where the filter comes, because it's less about it's very hard to have a measurable KPI that's based on values. However, values are something that you need to value on a day-by-day basis, not measure every 12 months and every 3 years as well. So it does take a lot of balance, but values are more about making sure you recruit the right people and then retain the right people, and that could mean that if someone doesn't fit, then they need to move on before it comes.
Yeah, good response. You can't buy loyalty though through money. You can only rent it for a while. Money might delay people from leaving, but unless they're truly engaged, unless their hearts and minds are in it, they won't provide you with, the best that they can be in terms of their behaviour and their performance. So, and I think a lot of companies might throw money in desperation to keep their really talented people, but it's not a long-term solution unless all the other things are in place. And, I've always thought that generally there are 3 things that are very important to an employee, the 3 C's: career, community, and cause. When you look at career, obviously they need a job that challenges them, that provides an opportunity for them to showcase their talents and feel good about themselves and be acknowledged. And they need a boss, hopefully, who encourages and finds a pathway for self-realisation, for career development. The community is feeling respected and included and feeling a sense of belonging. So important. And cause, feeling that you're worthy and you do have a meaningful purpose. I think if those 3 things are there, generally you'll keep somebody for quite a long period of time. On top of that, of course, they need the money to pay the bills.
Yep, agree.
Culture development gets a lot of airtime, the word culture, and people have a different take on it. What a meaning do you attach to culture, and why should a leader of a business pay attention to it?
Oh, look, I actually think culture is so much more important than some people pay attention to, and culture is a living and breathing thing that you need to feed on a day by day basis. Otherwise, it could go rogue and could cause you lots and lots of problems. And it is just that. Is that one of my sort of great mentors is a guy by the name of Don Ash, who runs a company called 100 Small Things, and the purpose of his company is to sort of demonstrate that leadership and culture is not just one big thing that you do and then forget about it. It's 100 small things done consistently with deliberate intent. That's how you create culture, and that's how you be a real leader. And so I guess from an organizational perspective, the definition of that culture to me is really important. You do that through your values. You do that through your actions to values that you can define and put out there. And then it becomes about living the values, about challenging people that don't live the values, and holding the culture piece as important in the structure as you do the technical piece and the capability piece. And because that magic happens when capability and culture are both aligned and are both on that high end of the scale. That's when people really do shine and businesses really do shine.
And I think one of the best ways to make a values-based culture come alive is through presenting staff with behavioural dilemmas. In other words, if you say, look, in this particular situation where X happens and Y follows X, in our company we would choose to go this path, not this path. In other words, you make a very concrete example in order to enable people to understand your expectations of them in terms of their behaviour. And if you model that behaviour yourself, so important, isn't it, to be able to walk the talk and do what you're professing others do. You've got to set the example. So I think that's so important. And in the mining industry, companies like IGO do their value statements really well. Instead of saying integrity, performance, results, honesty, whatever, they have phrases like run through the sprinklers, ignite the spark. Once again, these are visually evocative, memorable types of statements that add a bit of colour and excitement instead of the blandness of single words on a value statement. Amazon, one of their values, fairly aggressive, get a backbone, disagree and commit. That's Amazon, pretty full-on aggressive culture. So I think some companies in the mining industry need to do a bit more work in terms of more thoughtfully and carefully articulating their values. But
I think you're right, and I think that comes to internally as well. And I'm sure there's examples of companies that will have a set of values that they all go on an offsite and spend a couple of days working on and saying these are our values, but then stick them to the wall and forget about them. It's actually deliberate action to embed the values, to show what actions that achieve those values look like, and then make sure the leaders in particular are living the values on a day-by-day basis. And then that really drives that leadership in order to make sure that culture is being achieved.
Yeah. This Don Ash fellow you spoke of, his business sounds really interesting, 100 Small Things. Is he a local Perth guy?
So he's based out of Melbourne, but he's from a mining family and has been advising mining companies for a long time.
Okay.
So I first met him when I was in sort of site management 15 odd years ago, and have sort of kept close to him throughout the years. He's a great guy.
I'll look him up. He looks like he's got some really good content. Let's talk about industry opportunities and challenges. What's the biggest single challenge facing the mining industry today?
It changes day by day, I think. But look, one thing that I'm really concerned about is just the lack of discoveries. We need exploration. We need to discover more mines. Like if you look at the major mines around the place, a lot of them have been around for a long time. They're not new discoveries. They're mines that have kept moving. Higher commodity prices has sort of helped them stay in operation, but there is a distinct lack of new projects and new things coming along. So I really think that while you're making money at the top end, you can never underestimate the value of spending money on that exploration front and building up the mines of the future.
And is it the complexity of Australia's approval processes that is providing an obstacle or even a disincentive to people doing that exploration to identify the new projects?
Yeah, there's so many hard things about exploration. It takes 1,000 exploration projects to get one major mine. So they need to find investment, they need to have roadblocks removed, and they need to have access to ground in order to be able to find those mines of the future, and the industry depends on it.
A lot of people talk about the bureaucratic red tape, and they also talk about the green tape, the environmental regulations. But it seems to me that most people in the industry want to do the right and responsible thing. They want to protect the environment, and they don't mind the green tape. But it's the duplication and complexity and layers of government, state and federal, that really make it hard work for people who are looking for a place to allocate their money to choose Australia. WA used to be the number one jurisdiction in the world for investment into projects. We're now 17th, I believe. It's a tragedy, and I think, I know Tanya Constable, who was on this show some months ago, the MD of the Minerals Council of Australia, is working really hard with the government to reduce the complexity, but it needs to have been done yesterday. We are losing valuable investment dollars worldwide as a result of the stupidity, I think, of the regulation process.
Yeah, look, it is a complex process. There are definitely efficiencies that we can make. I do like to talk about the Bellevue example a bit, where Bellevue was discovered in November 2017. In its current format, it was an old mining area, and we poured our first gold in October 2024. So, it was less than 7 years from discovery to production.
Pretty fast, isn't it?
Super fast, and I don't think there's any other jurisdiction in the world except Western Australia that could happen. So, look, I still love Western Australia. All the regulators out there, I love you. Please keep approving my projects. They were his words, not mine.
Good on you. Now, this has been an interesting conversation. It's time to wrap it up. Here are some rapid-fire questions. What gives you hope?
Oh, look, for me, it's the next generation coming through. I'm very privileged to do the work that I do with the WA School of Mines. I get to see the alumni from, have deep relationships with the alumni from when they're, students, fresh graduates, through to mining professionals, and the quality of people and the quality of talent that is, coming into the industry at the moment seem way better than what I was when I came out. So that is the biggest thing that gives me hope for the future of the industry, is the great people that are starting to come in at the bottom level.
And I was really pleased before we came into the studio, you were talking about the uptick in graduates in mining engineering, which I wasn't aware of. I thought we were really in the dumps still in terms of producing mining engineers.
Yep. So Western Australia, best place to mine, best place to study. Go to Kalgoorlie, study at the School of Mines. But we are seeing some really good numbers coming through, and competition's great for quality. So, I'm up, as I said, I'm up in Kalgoorlie this week to see the next crop coming out, and very excited.
What's the big risk the world is not paying enough attention to?
As a gold miner, I am obligated to say it is not enough hard assets to own. There's a lot of fake money sloshing around the system. There's a lot of, governments can print money to get themselves out of problems. You cannot print gold, and gold is something that has held value for generations and generations. And that makes me, a gold bull, which I have to be as the MD of a gold company. But I think that the world, any way you look at it, is in a pretty precarious place at the moment, and you just can't own enough hard assets.
No, that's right. It's good for the gold price, but what an unfortunate way to get the gold price to the level it is, to have a world in quite a mess. As you look in the rear vision mirror, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
Oh wow! So in mining, we because it's such a 24/7, 365 industry, we don't stop to reflect on achievements enough. A lot of feedback in mining is we don't celebrate success enough, and the reason for that is that you have a good quarter, that's great. You put out your quarterly, and the market says, "Great, what are you doing next quarter?" It's always forward looking, and the wheels are always turning, and you're always on that hamster wheel. So I think one day I can sit and reflect on some cool things that I did. But when I sit here today, one of the big things that I achieved, or was a key part of the team that achieved, I guess, was one, obviously building the Bellevue Gold Mine and taking a mine from exploration through to a modern good mine is really rewarding and really good to see. But in my Northern Star days, before I joined Bellevue, I spent a long time working on the KCGM acquisition, so the Super Pit acquisition, and then the merger with Saracen to bring the iconic Kalgoorlie Super Pit into Australian ownership for the first time. That was a pretty proud moment doing that.
When you think about future aspirations, either personal or career, what boxes do you have left to tick? What do you really want to achieve?
Geez, I actually don't know. I mean, I just want to work with good people. I just want to, have a positive environment when I go to work. I want to, create value for others, for my family, for my network, for my community, and we like to say at WA School of Mines, like, we do shape the future of the mining industry through WASM graduates. And, that's definitely something that gets me out of bed and keeps me involved in the WA School of Mines side of things, because, you've seen the effect on the industry that graduates have had from WASM. I'll certainly still be, putting the time and effort in to create the next batch that'll make the next changes.
Yeah. We agreed before that each of us is a work in progress, but what aspect of your personal leadership do you need to improve to be a more effective leader?
Yeah, so it's just about time management and balance, I think. That is really the key improvement area, and you probably get that from a lot of execs and a lot of people, but, being able to balance all of the burners of life of, looking after yourself, looking after your family, looking after your relationships, your friends, on top of all the work things that you have to do. It's always a constant battle, and that battle will never finish, but that's certainly the area that I think, you have to be aware of, because if you get too focused on one thing, the other thing suffers.
Yeah. Who would be a leader, living or deceased, that you'd really like to have a meeting with, to have over for dinner at your house? And what would be the most important question you'd ask them?
I think I was actually thinking about this as a part of a leadership summit I did recently. And the name that kept coming up was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And when I was a kid, I used to have an Arnold poster on my wall. When I was about 10, my favourite poster was Predator. Sorry, my favourite movie was Predator. And, this guy went from a bodybuilder to a movie star to the governor of California, and now he's an author, but like a really interesting guy that's had many sort of facets to his career and done really well in lots of things. I just think it'd be a fascinating chat to, learn about adaptability, learn about being useful, which is his key message, and then just get some great stories of action movies from the 1980s.
What an interesting and great choice. No one's ever said that before, but I've seen a documentary on him, and I'm a fan of his movies. My favourite would be Terminator 2. But you're absolutely right. He's one of very few people, if any, that have had careers in three totally separate streams: bodybuilding, movies, blockbuster selling movies, and politics. And he's obviously got a mindset and attitude that if you want something badly enough, you can do it. And he came from extremely humble beginnings.
Correct.
In Austria, I think.
Yep.
What a great choice. Couple more. What's the best career or business advice you've ever been given?
So the advice that I always have a bit of fun in the office quoting the great Australian philosopher Ross Lyon, who used to be the coach of the Fremantle Dockers. And, some of the Rossisms that are out there can be quite amusing, but the one that I use the most is it's never as good as it seems, it's never as bad as it seems. It's always somewhere in the middle. And, you just use that to level you and ground you when things go really well, are going really well. If you don't take too much ownership, you don't drink your own bathwater so much, then the times when things aren't going so well, you're not going to take too much ownership. You're not going to get down in the dumps on it, and you're going to be in the best position to work your way through it and work your way out the other side. So, it's just never as good, never as bad. Someone, comes into the office, oh, what a great quarter we've had. Never as good, never as bad. Let's go do the next one.
What a good philosophy. Somebody said something similar to me. His name was Rob Smith, a past boss of mine, and he said, I've always been quite an anxious, somewhat tense individual. And he said, David, think of it this way, that the past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. The only thing that does exist right now is the present. So be present in the present. Don't worry about past mistakes. Don't worry about the uncertainties of the future. Concentrate on what's in front of you. Great advice.
Yeah.
Final question. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self to help you build and lead a better quality life?
So this is always a hard one because I think I lead a pretty good life and I'm very happy with where I've gotten to. And, the butterfly theory of giving myself advice when I'm 20 would mean that my life would be very different now, which is, sort of always makes me grapple with a question like this. I think that, probably the two things would be, and somewhat related, don't underestimate the power of compound interest. So that's compound interest in life. One gym session doesn't make a difference, but 100 gym sessions in a year does, and you've always got to start with that first step. But on the compounding interest theme, it would also be, hey mate, go buy as much Apple stock as you can and just hold on to it for the next 20 years.
Yeah, great advice, and that was shared by Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger, I saw his very last interview on TV. He died, you may recall, 3 or 4 years ago now. He died at the age of 99. And the interviewer asked him, you've been in business for over 70 years. What's the most important thing you've learned in your business life? And he said something which I found very interesting, and I wasn't expecting it. He said, the most important thing I've discovered is that trust is the most powerful economic force on earth. Mm-hmm. Without trust, without two individuals building a relationship where they know they've got each other's back and they trust each other, nothing happens in business or anything. And I thought, how true is that? How wise was that? Darren, I've really enjoyed talking with you over the past 1 hour and 6 minutes. You're an interesting man and you articulate, I think, your values really well. And you've done a great job at Bellevue. I'd love to have you back on the podcast in a couple of years maybe, and we can talk about the additional assets that you've acquired as part of the Bellevue portfolio.
And the Dockers winning a couple of grand finals.
Look, I don't know about that. If they don't win this year, I don't think they're going to win. But thanks, mate. It's been good to talk with you.
Nice one. Thank you.
Thanks also to Louis and Ben on the production desk of Podwave Studios, and thanks to Carol Wilson and Alana Bray-White. They work every week to produce these podcasts, and without their assistance, we couldn't make it happen. So we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Hearts and Minds. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a rating or share it with a friend. And don't forget to follow us and connect on social media for updates on all of our upcoming guests. I'm Alana Bray-White, and I look forward to you joining us for our next episode.